Hello and thank you for watching. This is STSC back again with another one of these build videos. You guys seem to enjoy the last one, so I figured I'd try and make this into more of a regular thing. I don't know how often I'll be able to do these, but I guess only time will tell. On my last video, I received a comment asking if I could make a similar kind of build video for a combiner. And honestly, my first reaction was that I really didn't want to do that. Combiners can be incredibly tricky and honestly incredibly frustrating, so I wasn't super excited by the prospect of trying to record that process. But then I remembered the Zodiacons. The Zodiacons are a trio of transformers that were built by IX Rollout IX. I have tons of nostalgia for them, and as a kid I watched the videos all of the time. Then, eventually, I built my own versions, and I uploaded them to this channel as a Halloween special. Honestly, I really don't like my versions. I think they've aged kind of like milk. They're just very clunky, and I'm just not happy with them. But I still have a really big attachment to the Zodiacons, and I would kind of like to have them again. So, why not revamp them in this video style? Hopefully, since I already know the basic in and outs of how they're supposed to work, it should be a little bit less frustrating than a typical combiner process, and it will still be fun, hopefully, to watch them come together. But before we get into that, I want to cover some changes I've made to the ambulance since you last saw him. Here we have the ambulance, and in this mode it has changed a tiny bit, but you'll probably not notice it unless I point it out. The doors are a little bit different, and this section is extended by half a plate. But, like I said, you'd probably wouldn't notice that anything's different. In fact, this is actually the version I used in the thumbnail for last week's video, so I kind of cheated. And getting him into robot mode, you can see much more clearly the changes I've made. The first one you'll probably notice is the new head. Once he was done, he started giving me these kind of little gremlin vibes, like he's this little creature that goes around the battlefield scavenging parts from dead bodies, and I wanted to reflect that more in his head, so I went for this kind of like little weird, almost bat-like creature face with the ears. It might be a little too much for some people, but personally I like this kind of stuff on my Transformers, so I went with it. The other thing you'll see is that he has a new chest plate. I didn't like the basic square look, so I went with these. I would have liked something with a little more detail, but unfortunately there's just not a lot of space to work with here, and I think this is decent enough. I also split the door into two fingers so you can have more of a creature-like look, and the other door now swings down forward to be the front of his shoulder and kind of fills in what was a pretty ugly gap before. There's also a major structural change to his shoulder. I'll just pull it off here. You can see it's now attached by these rounded plates into a robot hand, and then the armature is now attached this way. This allows for forward and backward movement at the shoulder, and I just think is a lot nicer. As far as a name for this little guy, there's two suggestions I've received that I'm strongly considering. The first is Triage, and the second is Stretcher. I really like that one because it reflects his weird, creepy, long arms, and I don't know, it just seems like it fits him. But I'm still deciding if I'm going to stick with that. With that out of the way, we can now focus on actually starting the build. And I've decided to start with the Legbot, Cancer. Now, when building a Legbot, the most important part is considering how the hips are going to play into it. You need joints that will be strong enough to support the combiner, and you'll need to figure out a way to hide them within the transformation of the robot. Now, for this model, I'm going to be using these T-joints, which are made using these pneumatic T-pieces. They can just go into a hollow stud, and then placing a plate like this, and a second one, and then this would be effectively the thigh. You now have a pair of hips that can swing forward and backwards, in and out, and swivel. So these will be the hips of our combiner. and we have to build the rest of the model around it. Now, I already have a vague idea of how the transformation works for Cancer. The arms will come from the claws, the legs will come from the eyes of the crab. So basically the whole thing has been laid out for me, and it's just a matter of building it around this assembly. So I suppose let's get started. I'm going to start by trying to build out the hips here, or the thighs rather, so I have something to build off of. I'm thinking that this will be the shell of the crab, the legs will come off of the thighs, and the claws will come forward. So let's just start mocking that up. Now, usually on my builds, I try not to use mixel joints for builds at this smaller scale because I find that they can be kind of ugly and they introduce gray into the color scheme. But with the Zodiacons, gray is already part of their color scheme, and we're going to need stronger joints to support the combiner. So here we have the combine mode knees. So for now, what I'm going to start with is kind of trying to design a crab that turns into legs. And as that goes, I'm going to kind of consider how that can also turn into a robot, if that makes any sense. So it's pretty obvious this is thighs, but this can also be where the crab claws connect and crab legs can come off the ends. So why don't I actually give it some crab legs first and foremost so that it's a little more clear when I'm building. So if I just grab some of these, I grabbed one too many, and put that on the thigh. Now we have somewhere for crab legs to attach. And now I need robot arms, which I seem to have misplaced. There we go. I'm terrible at organization. I always forget where I've put things. So just to start off simple, I probably won't stick with these as the crab legs. I think those could be kind of small. I don't know. But at least for the time being, these can represent the crab legs. And it'll make it more clear what I'm building. So there you have a crab starting to form. And grabbing some more mixel joints. And so I just dropped the mixel joint. There we go. Assembling up the armature. So that's where the claws will connect. Now let's build up the claws, and the claws will be the combine mode feet. So I'm going to use these rounded elements here to be the claws. Just a good bit of shaping. Just grab some of them and build up some claws. Yeah, so like I said, right now I'm kind of just mocking up a crab that will turn into a pair of legs. And once I have that, I can hopefully start considering more the robot mode. That's usually kind of how I would do this. Sort of consider one mode turning into the combine mode, and then try and build the robot around that. And yep, there's the piece I need. He's very loose right now, very floppy. I think I need to replace this brick. That was one I just got off Bricklink, so I guess I got sent kind of a bum piece. It's a little bit disappointing, but I guess that's life. So just some tiles. And okay, so we got a crab. He's looking kind of doofy right now. He's missing his body and his head. So not the most amazing looking crab, but he is a crab. And very simply, he can form a pair of legs. Which can't really stand right now because I've designed them, like I said, very poorly. But more or less, that's the goal. It's to have a crab that turns into legs. And as far as how will the rest of it, how will it turn into a robot, I'm thinking these would swing up. And this comes down. So you have these wide shoulders. The legs would be down here, formed from the head of the crab. The head would come out from the butt of the crab. And maybe you could even fold the legs forward to be kind of a spiked shoulder pad, which is a detail that the original had. So let's add some legs. So before we add the legs, I've gone ahead and added this a little bit here. This will work as a waist swivel, hopefully in both modes, both his robot mode and his combined mode. And it's what we'll be able to build his legs off of. Now, since that's where the chest will be connecting in combined mode, I want the connection to be fairly simple. So I'm going to take some brackets and build them up onto here so that the studs can be facing forward or up in this configuration, so that hopefully I can have like a basic studded connection for plopping the torso down onto this. So there we go. Now we need some hips or a place to connect the hips. And I'm thinking the legs can form a shell. I have an idea here. Having these here as the hips, so the hips can swing down like this for robot mode and then up like this for crab mode. And then kind of a partner piece that I use all the time, the D snot, at least that's what I call them, and what some people I know call them. I don't know how common that phrase is, D snot, but I like it and I use it. The D snot can fold up onto here or connect onto there. And then we can kind of build a shell off of this to be his legs. So let's do that. It's probably going to be much more apparent this time that I'm using random colors, because I've kind of run out more on black than on white, which is what I was using last time. So just going to grab my stud drawer for some red studs to be his eyes. So you can see that kind of classic rounded crab shell look. I think that's already looking pretty cool. some 1x3s here to fill this in. There we go. And last but not least, sandwich that there we go with a 1x4. And oops, it's very fragile right now. I broke it. So let's actually fix that right now with a plate like this. And then as a connection point for the torso, here's a half-studded plate. So we have the crab. His legs are already looking kind of small for his size. So the legs will definitely have to be beefed up. But this can swing up. These come down in his arms. This comes down to be his legs. Sorry if that was off camera. Again, this is still a very awkward setup for me. But yeah, I think already a robot is starting to form here and looking pretty cool. So let's, I think, add on to the legs, because they could use a lower leg, I think, to just lengthen them out and make them a little more proportional. And I'm thinking I could use some inverted plates, or not plates, inverted slopes. That's the word that is eluding me. And I think this can just use stud friction. I might change this if he needs forward support. Right now, this would be the leg, so it would kind of shoot back, kind of like digitigrade, and then this can fold in. And that even gives a cutout now for more of a chest to be built out this direction, which I think is great. But like I said, we'll see if he needs more foot support. So let's get this out of the way. If he needs more foot support once he's done, which he very well might, but it shouldn't be too hard to add like a toe that can flip out. But for now, just keeping it simple. Now he's got more of a shell. He's got the claws up front, the little legs, and he can transform into a pretty cool robot who's, as he's supposed to be, very top heavy. That was the kind of how I would describe the original Cancer. He was a fairly top heavy looking guy. So yeah, he's definitely going to need some toe support. That's just not enough to support him. So we're going kind of back to the drawing board on that. So these simple legs were not enough. We're going to need something that will actually support his weight. So let's get one of these. This will kind of take its place as the slope. And one of these, which can attach some kind of foot. And so that would be a foot, swings back, boom. Like I said, it's not a hard thing to add, though now this will limit how much space I have to develop his chest. So I guess we'll see how much of an effect that has on the robot design. But for now, we're focused on the legs, and this works for the legs, and that's what matters. So now he's got a foot, and when he actually has two of them, he should be able to stand. So let's build a second. So here we have a second one built up. I've actually flipped the foot over. I just think that's going to be a nicer look. So now he can stand. I might try actually with a shorter foot. I don't know if I like how long those feet are. It's kind of a goofy look. If he needs it, I can live with it. Like if he needs that much forward support. But I have a sneaking suspicion that with just one longs, he'll be able to stand just fine. But I also thought he would stand on these and was completely wrong. So that tells you how often I'm right about these things. So that's one little foot there and another. Now let's swap those on without completely breaking them, hopefully. So I just left a bunch of doors hanging open there. So one little foot, second little foot. And he stands just fine. So those bigger feet were overkill. And I don't know about you, but I think he's already shaping up to a pretty cool robot. Flipping him over, turning this around. We have him turning into a leg, or legs rather. Then this can just swing back. These, usually there's some amount of kibble on a combiner, and these, I suppose, can be kibble that's just hanging out under the torso mode. Or maybe they're going to bulk up the torso mode. We'll see when I get to the torso. But, you know, you have a peg here, a pretty clear peg for a torso to go onto. You have legs. There we go. So putting him back into crab mode, the one thing I haven't really addressed yet is a head for his robot mode. And the head's going to have to attach here. Now I'm thinking I might do a 2x2 head that will kind of turn diagonal and have a visor face or a pointed face. And that could kind of just plug onto here. And maybe I'll have more larger legs that can swing back and kind of hide the head a little more. So why don't we just start by adding the head at all, and we'll see how it looks. So just putting a bracket onto here and then securing it down with a curved slope. And then one of these. One of these. A red eye. And a quarter plate, or corner plate rather, to fill that in. And a tile to top it off if I could get, there we go, one of those out of the little drawer I have. So, cool head, rotates down, crab butt, I guess? Crab butt? I guess we'll see. We'll see if I can make that work. For now, I don't think it's a terrible look. It's a butt on the crab. Not a great look. Not a terrible look, but it is a look. But the question is, will that work with the shoulders? So now we're running into this issue where the shoulders actually are going to hit the head. So if this was going to work, oops, breaking this guy left and right, we would need another plate here like this, and that might be that might just be a bit much. So I have, I think I have to consider a different solution because this is just, that's too much of a butt on your crab, I think. that's a little much for a brick coming out of your crab's butt. So I think what we're gonna have to do is find a way to clear back up this space so that we have more room to work with for adding a head kind of facing forward. So I think I'm going to take these and shorten them down a plate. So basically, just doing that with a tile on it, of course. And that will actually give them ankle tilt too, which could be fun. So now with that on the crab, you can see we now have all this room to work with for potentially giving him a head. And that should make my life a little bit easier. So let's, I'll just duplicate that for the other side. So now I've swapped both of those over, and like I said, we have this room to work with again. And I'm thinking maybe this kind of head could fold into here and then kind of fold up like that. And that could be a cool look. He's kind of hunched over. So we need an attachment point because there's no room for something under the head here. Like if there was an armature under the head, it would be poking out and you could see the eyes. So we're going to need something that attaches probably over the head and then swings it out. So we're going to need to swap that out for one of these, which has a stud in the center. And then have something that can connect onto there, like say, I'm just going to do something incredibly basic right now, like this, and something like that. Again, I'm just doing literally the most basic thing I can think of. Not something I would actually use, but just a proof of concept here to communicate the idea. So, tucked away in crab mode comes up in robot mode. And that would clear the shoulders there. So that's what I'm going to have to consider. Though I'm thinking I'm not super attached to this head. I could always drop this head in favor of something a little bit simpler maybe, or not simpler, but something that doesn't require such a strange armature. So I'm just going to kind of freeform, experiment with something here. So this can fold forward, fold up to be a neck, fold down. So what if I took kind of this, or I took this, and there we go. Get some eyes. Some eyes going. So we have a bit of a head here. And finish it off with that. So something like this. Folds down, conceals pretty good. Folds up, gives them this kind of hunched over look. bring out the legs. I think that's a pretty okay look. So I think that, as simple as it is, could work. So I think it might need an extra plate here. But there we go. So let me get that back into crab mode. So here we have them back in crab mode, and I think it's time that we fix these frankly terrible claws. So let's pop those off. And let's consider designing some claws that can actually look good and function, since these were always kind of placeholders. So these claws are also going to form the feet of Zodiacon, so that's important to remember. So I think in order to achieve that, I'm going to have one of the claw parts, one of the claw halves, actually hinge in the center. So if I just grab this, you can see it. You could have the claw open and close, and then there's a toe. So just tile that quickly. And then it's just a matter of forming the other one, which will have to be a solid heel. So I think using some of these inverted pieces, you can get, a crab claw that looks pretty good, and then opens up into a foot. Maybe it could use a little bit more thickness here, just to look better, but there we go. So I'm gonna go ahead and build a second one, and we can put it on the crab. So here we have the new claws on the crab mode. I think it looks a lot nicer, and I guess it's time to finally look at these legs. I'll be honest, there's a part of me that considers just keeping these because I don't like how unwieldy large spindly legs can get on models. But, well, let's be honest, this just doesn't look very good. They're very tiny. They just don't scale with this. So I think we're going to have to drop them and switch to something a little bit more proportionate. So I've gone ahead and got all of the relevant pieces out for making spindly crab legs. Mostly just these bar connectors, some barbs, robot hands. And he's going to have 6 legs. I'm pretty sure crabs are supposed to have 8. But I just don't think there's going to be room for a 8th pair. So it's just going to be 6. And personally, I'm not a marine biologist. I don't really care. As long as it looks good. As long as it looks like a crab to a layman, that's what matters to me. So just going to grab a bunch of these in black. Just getting them out. So I have them at my disposal. Now, the connection point for these legs is very close together, and I'd like to spread them out a little. So what I'm thinking is I could use these bar connectors here to then bring out a connection point further away, and that will be where the leg connects. And I think that should work well. So one leg in the center, then one leg on both of these bar connectors. Then a robot hand into each of these. And another bar connector. And tipping it all off with a barb on each end. And now he's got much more proportionate legs, and I can go ahead and build the second set on the other side off camera. So here we have Cancer, and I would say he's in a state of semi-completion. everything is here, and I think it looks pretty good. And he's able to transform, but of course, as a combiner part, he can't truly be done until the other parts are done, and I'm sure that he can combine with them. So things might have to change, but he's looking pretty good. I went ahead and I bulked some stuff up off camera, like these arms here, and I also just filled in stuff in what will be the combined mode thighs to make them more sturdy, but there he is. Nice little crab mode, plenty of articulation in the legs, articulation in the claws, but there's not much to say, so I guess we can transform him. So you would just bring up the halves here. Let me move back the camera. Then swing out what will be his legs. And fold this forward. Then this can come down. Swing out. Fold the foot out. Bring this down. And you have, I think, some pretty cool legs. They're kind of digitigrade and bestial, and they're pretty cool. Bring up his head. I think these crab claws can kind of dangle over the shoulders. Sorry, that was off camera. But these can kind of dangle over his shoulders. Well, these ones maybe can be positioned kind of like this. And then bring his crab claws down to be robot mode arms. And there we go. Yeah, I think, a decent little robot mode. Not crazy, not amazing, but I think it gets the job done. Looks pretty cool. I suppose you could angle all of these up to give them kind of spiked shoulder pads. That might be the better look. Something like that could be pretty cool. So yeah, obviously this is anti-studs, but it's simple enough to just swap that for an inverted tile. And it looks pretty cool. A decent amount of articulation. No knees, but that's life sometimes. So I guess, there you go. Now we can get him into his combined mode. Swing this. Bring that down. Now it's interesting to consider how these legs will work. I guess they can just kind of grip the thigh. That's actually a pretty cool look. Wasn't intentional, but there we go. That actually looks pretty cool. So again, have these kind of gripping the thigh. And then the rest of this will kind of just become kibble. Oops, I broke it. I realized while off camera that, sorry, I'm breaking it a bunch here. I realized that these can swing back kind of into their beast mode configuration, just flipped over, and form a pretty decent backpack. Now, here we have him in combined mode. Pretty cool set of legs. But one thing I did notice is this is a lot of stuff kind of where the torso is going to be. So the torso could just wrap around that kind of and like embed itself into there. So that could be fine, but it also might not. So what I might end up doing is removing this whole waist swivel and end up just attaching this directly down onto here. Kind of like, just kind of like this. And that might make for a better combined mode. It would slightly change the crab mode and robot mode. It would change the proportions, but I'm not going to do that until I know I have to. So for now, we're just going to leave it as it is. And we'll see how the other members of Zodiac turn out. But for now, we have a third of Zodiac, and it's looking pretty cool. I think much cooler than last time, and hopefully you guys agree. But I think that's about it for now. So I'll see you next time.